Stephen Kinnock.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Before addressing the specifics of this motion that's before us today, I just wanted to make a general point, which is that I have no problem at all with the argument that constituencies should be of equal size. My concern relates far more to the fact that the government is proposing that we reduce from 650 to 600, which is a completely arbitrary number, pulled essentially out of thin air. Yeah. So let's just get one thing straight. The government's arguments for this are completely spurious. They talk about the cost of politics, but we're already set to lose 73 members of the European Parliament, depriving the public of the representation that they provide. And, of course, the government's more than happy to continue stuffing the House of Lords to the brim. So the whole process is, in essence, a barefaced gerrymander. It also... I will give way. Yes.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend. Does he realise there's been absolutely no word from the government that they intend to cut the number of ministers? So what they're actually doing is proportionately increasing the size of the executive as well.
Well, my honourable friend is clearly psychic, because that's precisely the point that I was about to make. The ratio between frontbench and backbench MPs is vital in terms of the balance of the way in which our democracy works. Backbench MPs play a critical role in holding the government to account. The fewer backbench MPs that we have, from whichever party happens to be in power, are able to fulfil their public duty. And that would reduce, critically, the amount of scrutiny that's given to vitally important issues. And with arguably the most important issue that our country has faced since the Second World War coming towards us, this House will have an increased workload. The role of backbench MPs in holding the executive to account becomes even more important. And workloads increase both for Westminster and Cardiff, Edinburgh and Belfast. There's also a very compelling reasons to undermine the argument about reducing from 650 to 600 at a constituency level. There's a real concern over the proposal in terms of the impact it will have on the social and cultural dynamics of each constituency. It's crucial that MPs represent areas that have natural communities and shared interests. I will give way.
Just on that point, fair is the point I made before about Hull East and Hull West. There's also a proud tradition around the Hessel Road community of fishing, which goes back for years in Hull. Now, the new boundary is going to divide that community, a community that has existed in Hull for over hundreds of years because of its proud fishing traditions. Now, do you not agree that that should be looked at again?
I do agree absolutely with my honourable friend, and we really are seeing some quite absurd things being thrown up by this review. For example, in my constituency, the proposal was to have a boundary line which separated the shopping centre from the high street. It is utterly absurd and ludicrous. The fact is that wherever you draw the line on a map driven by a rigid mathematical equation, you carve up communities, you force unnatural alliances, and you throw communities together in ways which do not make sense and which end up deeply alienating the people that we are elected to represent. I will give way.
I thank you very much for giving way. And he's absolutely right to identify these critical issues that affect communities all over the country, as members on both sides have done. But doesn't he agree this is precisely why the Boundary Commission is holding its work, during which he and all of us and members of the public have had the opportunity to put precisely those views forward into the Commission, which will consider it and bring it forward?
I thank the Honourable Lady for her intervention, but the fundamental problem with the logic of her argument is that it's about the terms of reference that the Commission were given. They were given terms of reference based on 600 and on a very narrow quota of 5%. And based on that, the Electoral Commission had its hands tied and was inevitably going to end up with some of the completely absurd proposals that we've seen. I will briefly give way.
Does he not also agree with the Constitutional Committee in the previous Parliament that said the changes every 5 years will mean there is great disruption for communities, meaning that they never settle down. It will cost the Exchequer also more because it's a 5-year rotation. And the bill proposal actually would change that to 10 years, provide safety and security for communities to build and save the Exchequer money.
I agree with my honourable friend. It provides that stability and continuity, and also, given the 7.5% quota, the changes would not be that radical, even on a 10-year basis, so it's an incremental change. Why are the government ploughing ahead with this, then? Well, the bottom line is that the entire boundary review process has been a barefaced gerrymander. The use, and that is combined with the use of procedural devices and backstairs manoeuvring to block the will of the House, and that's further evidence of their willingness to abuse the power that is vested in government. The Procedure Committee's 2013 report concluded that government policy is not to refuse a money or ways and means resolution to a bill which has passed second reading. Surely the view of the Procedures Committee must be paramount in this case. The government clearly has no respect for this House or for our democracy more widely. First, their £1 billion bribe to the DUP, and now this. My honourable friend, the member for Manchester Gorton, who's unfortunately not in his place now, is therefore absolutely right to push the government to do right by our democracy and to bring forward his bill. It is essential that 2.1 million new voters are heard. It is essential that my constituents and many of the constituents across this House are fairly and properly represented. And it is essential that this government is preventing from riding roughshod over our democracy.